Thank you very much. Shaleen Wadhwana, I really want to, we are here, the reason we're all here together is because of you. So thanks for all that preparation, also to got to me ready. You came up, I think, with this amazing title that we all hope we can live up to, Raw and Radical. But that's for you guys to decide. I just wanted to say that we are very happy to be here on the side of BMW as long-term partners, not only of the art fair, but also of the amazing coaching series biennial, now run by Shubhi Rao in this edition. Dilika Sundar was one of the artists who has won the foiling of the X7 competition, which you can see right outside of our lounge. It's a great work called Boundless that brings together imagery from underneath the ocean up all the way to the stars. I hope you can indulge in it and like the poetry of it as well. Without further ado, I really wanted to start off with, I believe, with Jayashree Chakravarty to talk about your artistic practice. I'm looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In my work, actually, I've been trying for quite some time. I'm talking about nature, the way it is and how we treat the nature. The green has disappeared, it's no more there. So my work says that it is gray and dusty, and we are encouraging that. We are facing also the disbalance in the nature. This is the main thing that I have been trying to put together. I always feel I can feel the pulse of the nature, and very much the linearity in the nature is something very important for me. I try to create in my work lots of different kind of natural material I have been using in the work, on canvas, on paper. There is a layer of papers that I put together to create leather-like surface, and there is many kind of things like eggshell or cotton, actual roots. Everything I'm bringing into my work to say that yes, I can find my own material, and I would like to work with that so that I can be more close to the nature, and my understanding will be much more clear. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we continue, but maybe just one question before we then enter an other discussion with all of the artists present. You spent some time in Aix-en-Provence, and you were somehow inspired by the supports and surfaces movement, which basically made clear the canvas as canvas, and the stretcher and the bar, everything that is behind, the illusion of a painting. I feel that, is it too much to say that you're also, with using biodegradable material, using sustainable material, do you also reveal what you have said that is lost, vis-a-vis the deterioration of nature? Do you lay bare the degradation of nature in your work?
In Aix-en-Provence, actually, like the École de Beaux-Arts that I was doing my residency. That is, somehow I felt that there is not many things that I could learn. First thing is that how they look at the work of canvas or paper, as a material, or it's the kind of the way they put it together. That says something about their art expression. So those things was interesting for me.
Thank you, Jayashree. We're going to get into that a bit later as well. And moving on to Mithu Sen. Thank you so much for attending this panel. And we have been discussing a quote from India Today prior to our discussion. Before you take it away from me, I'm going to throw this at you. India Today referred to you in 2018 as eternal temptress. Maybe by looking at your work, it will become clear what they were thinking, calling you an eternal temptress. Thank you so much for sharing your artistic practice with us.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, BMW and IAF for this wonderful opportunity to share my practice. Next. So this is the message I received last night when I was boarding on a flight. I just flew last night and I came back in the morning to Delhi. And so before that I apologize, I had a different presentation. And soon after I received this message, I changed my mind. And I said to my dear Shaleen, who always approved whatever I do on my radical hospitality platform, that if I can share one video that how I support the given time frame, because we are given 5 minutes, otherwise the orchestra will start. So I don't know, already I think I covered 30 seconds, so can we go to the... So this is one performative lecture. I was invited to do my presentation in 19 minutes time, and it happened in Guggenheim 2016. So I did my presentation in 9.5 minutes, and this is an excerpt of 4 minutes and...
In hard go. It comes to come from you know, that's what I'm going to do. You was never stop in the whole family. In that on the do the Alosima, inclusive. That is a cow, teacher, in the tax. You just see, you come, you are God. In the heart of Udu Risama, is what couple through because of you know, in the wisdom speed. That was down through like some bush, optics. They're going to go, you know, something of ship, you know, let's go tree, equal is up. I was in a gun seat, so it's up. You know, don't take the south, 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 take the south. Shut you know, big. Oh, no, so. Oh, no, so. Oh, shit. You don't. Yes, sir. Oh, no, which route? What to the route? You know, which route? Which the come to? No, you could stop, see, come. Oh, what also? You know, after it. Oh. Also, sooner now, let's all that cause of puzzle. I could that single duty now see how soon. If you don't see, or it also you got all of some fixation. So extra short. What does somebody do? You have to say to be hard. You know that also? Well, come. Well, shut also. I told every time that.
So I made the film in the background on their given conducts, how to do the presentation. The artist's self-presentation is always a challenge, either with time or with language. I did a film and then I performed. I was told that there will be one in there 5 seconds before. So last night when the 65 minutes thing, and I think I'll forward, but I still want to continue till the orchestra plays. Can I? So this is basically the given conduct by the institutions and the hierarchies and the authorities in the society, and how we subvert that. So that was it, and my presentation was in imaginary language, which only happens once, and I think we understand that language. So that is it.
Well, thank you so much. I think two things come into play. If you allow me to ask you one question and then move on to the Al-Hadid. There's something that is associated with your work, and you call it, I think yourself, radical hospitality. I think radical hospitality is not what you will encounter at the BMW lounge, at the fair, because radical hospitality means that you are exposed to somebody who's really alien and undomesticated. You know, it's something that we probably saw a little bit in the video. And the other one is lingual anarchy. You said you made it up yourself. The language that nevertheless can be understood on a global scale. Do these two things come into play in the performance that you just showed?
Yeah, for sure. So radical hospitality, I don't know, I try to challenge the notion of hospitality, especially being in India. We have that is the greatest virtue, and also as a woman, that the greatest virtue is that you have to be hospitable with everything within your body. And how to confront that hospitality, and how to provide a kind of discomfort in that hospitality with flavor, because I call my medium is flavor, play with flavor, and with the twist of vulnerability, intuition, and humor. So that is all I can do. And lingual anarchy is, of course, because my mother is a poet in Bengali, and I always wanted to be a poet like her. That didn't happen. And throughout my life, I struggled. I was a little dyslexic when I was young. But then I started continuing writing in my mother tongue, which I could continue until I landed into Delhi. And to experience the politics of language, the hierarchy and hegemony of language made me become silent for almost 10 years, in the sense that I stopped writing poetry in Bengali. And then I came up with glitches and imaginary scripts and one-time language. So basically, I did not cultivate or did not produce another set of languages to add in this huge ocean of languages in this world, but to earning the language, the whole construct, the structure that we follow or we believe, and especially from a colonial mindset, we always have an idea of put language system, like some kind of scales. And earlier I used to be very nervous even to speak, and now I think it's just. English is a convenience. I'm not against English because I love language. I read and I just cannot cope up with this language. I just cannot pick up it in a very, my jargons, my vocabularies are not as it should be. So I don't fit into that kind of circle. So for a long time I felt myself as an alien. And then I came up with my own language, which only happens one time. And I think I just got back all my power, and I just felt so empowered with this kind of thing, with this kind of language. Because when you speak in this language, which nobody understands, then only we understand that what it means when you don't understand others and how you treat or judge. So being constantly judged, and that kind of humiliation, that kind of emotion and that the thing you go through is unexplainable. So I really feel that even today, like when I'm speaking, I feel nervous. I kind of feel uncomfortable. But if you ask me to speak in that language, it's not my mother tongue, because even our mother tongue is not our own, as Benitha said. So I feel extremely, extremely powerful. Like I am so fluent in that. So either you laugh or you cry, but you get what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mithu Sen. Sorry. Thank you, Mithu Sen. Moving on to Diana Al-Hadid. In an ArtNet interview in 2021, you said that your work is driven by temperament. You know, you're bending, you're blending, you're morphing. It's a very physical process where you sometimes say that you don't know how it will end when it comes to your creative practice. Maybe we can find out a little bit more about that. Thank you. This one works, so.
Thank you all for coming and for this opportunity. I have about every slide, maybe give me the 20 seconds on the first 3 slides, and then the following will be like 10 seconds each, something like that. Man, I really relate so much to what you said on so many different levels, especially the feeling of being an alien, feeling like an alien. I think that artists always feel a little bit like outsiders or aliens, and you kind of have to invent a language. And for me, I think through materials, through material metaphor, narrative, but I do kind of find my way as I'm making something. So I'll start with something, in the case of this work, for example, comes from, every piece I make kind of comes from the previous work. So everything's very integral in my studio, I suppose. So this was at the Memling Museum in Bruges, and I was responding to this opening in the ground that showed the original stone that Memling would have, Hans Memling was the Flemish painter who made this work. We'll go to the next one. Made this work called Allegory of Chastity. And I responded to it, obviously from a contemporary point of view, just kind of realizing how absurd it looks. This woman is kind of having to wear an entire mountain to maintain her chastity. And so I kind of imagined her as sort of like a plug to a volcanic eruption. And there would be these kind of narratives that came out afterwards. But it's a very modest little painting, but it kind of soared in my thinking. So you can go to the next slide. And then we can just go flip through, because I've got a lot. I just want to kind of give a big overview. So we'll go next. So a lot of my sculptures are made with very kind of simple materials, steel, simple kind of like industrial sculptural materials, a lot of very contemporary materials, and also very ancient processes like bronze. And in the same way that I think we all have to kind of figure out our own way of developing a language, I think a lot of my work has built up over time and usually has kind of common threads. I think a lot in terms of line and plane and how an image or a sculpture or a space is built by very, very kind of economic or simple means that are actually like very dense and layered and complicated. So these are kind of like paintings that are, it's a little confusing to understand that the process is a little bit backwards. So it's sort of made in, they're not really paintings, so it's not, well, they're paintings, I don't know, but they're not oil on canvas. and they're built up additively. So what you're seeing is sort of an archive of image of painted strokes, like, you know, over time. So it's the negative spaces, if you want to call them that. I don't know if spaces are negative, but you get my meaning. Those are made just because I didn't put paint on that surface, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit confusing, but this is actually a local exhibition at my gallery here, Gallery Isa Mumbai, who I did a show with in 2021, and unfortunately because of COVID I couldn't physically be there, so I came back. So yeah, these works kind of speak a lot to like an interior, you know, it's just coming out of 2020 and just living, imagining these spaces that you inhabit, imagining kind of bringing the outside into your world. And then I ended up moving 2 hours north of state in the country, so I went from living in New York City to the country, so it was very, very kind of a porous experience, right, where I also felt a new connection to nature that I have never, like, I feel like I just noticed what a tree looks like 2 years ago. I don't know, there was a kind of very, you know, eye-opening experience, kind of not going from the city to full-time country. It was really incredible. So I make these kind of timepieces. This one's loosely integrating Al-Jazari's water clocks into an outdoor site in Cleveland at the Syrian Cultural Garden. This is actually very recent, from I think just 2 weeks ago it opened. I work with mosaics sometimes, so again you can kind of see that the image is sort of always kind of in transition or moving, because it's built out of kind of this very wet material that hardens, you know, over time. So this is a recent, also this month. It's called The Long Defeat. I actually made this piece upside down and then flipped it back, and it's a part of an old work that had a long story, kind of changed. It was kind of happened in 2020. I'll show you, it might come up. Yeah, there. So I used the top of this piece that survived 2020. So I kept the top and I brought it into the studio. You can keep going. Nope. I mean back, I'm sorry, back to the, yeah. So I kind of flipped it upside down and threw a ton of material at it for like 2 years. And I called it The Long Defeat, and I flipped it back up. And I'm still trying to sort it out, so I guess I'll move on. That'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana Al-Hadid, and congratulations on the Penn station, subway station in New York City. That's amazing, I think, what they're doing with artists in the subways for some time now. And it's great to get that recognition, I'm sure. So I guess I have a question. I think something you said in 2019 for the Nashville Sublimation Show, you talked about that your work is not only a discovery for the viewer, but also for yourself. So there's this moment of discovery for you as well as the viewer. Do you consider the viewer to be part of the creative process, as you're both discovering something in your work which might not be the same?
I mean, I think that maybe the more accurate way to think about it is I'm sometimes myself and sometimes the viewer in the same body. I don't really think about, I mean, I think about the work as it's going to sit in a space as much as I can, and how obviously it relates to my own body as I work around it.
You know, you're not only, you know, delving into Christian mythology, you are, you know, a Christian artist. Christian symbols and try to express them through your work. So let's see from you what it is that you want to present in terms of your creative practice.
Thank you, those. I maybe not in the term, I'm
I'm going to show the work, but I try to put some of the works which for me it's very important, which is also in between. I closely associate with natural material and mostly things carry further to work on more. And space became a very central subject in the matter because I moved from a small town and I started studying in Madras in different places. So space became very important in my work. So I was kind of honed in early work. So it's always myself I started with in my entire college, and was kind of practicing that because most of the people don't know in Delhi or anywhere else. Like, I was showing in a small format and in wherever I was comfortable with. So I was thinking it's very important to show those words in the slide. It was a doll I made. It's suspended from the ceiling. It says cathedral me not. I had only 3 works in the exhibition in a solo. This is one piece from the exhibition. It's like my life-size doll making, and next slide. Next slide. For me, I was enjoying to make color on my own, rather using. I was even in the college, and I was using mostly watercolors and pastels and poster colors. I was not going beyond that. I've done very few oils in my college. But after coming out of the college, I felt very breathing, and I started making my own colors from material, which became a still life for me. So I started making with that, and sort of, my sketchbook became work in the entire process. Just see next slide. And this is how I started understanding the colors towards working. And also when I work with the material from different places, whenever I make color, they are from different regions, different climates and different sensibility of nature. So you won't get the same color. So you always stay in front of the colors. And end of the day, you get after, since I don't adjust anything to put color stable, they became one color. That kind of sort of made me very interesting. That was my color. Next. So I was very comfortable in this kind of situation. I was traveling a lot in that time. In 2008, I was invited in a camp in Sri Lanka. In one of the journey, I was in a different country. People were in my color. I can read, sign in my own mother tongue. I was very comfortable. After a few days, we went to the workshop place, and I hear people talking in Tamil, and I was very comfortable. And after, again, 2-3 days, I constantly hear a sound of something which was kind of disturbing me. And I asked him, what does the sound come from? Like, where does the sound come from? And they were saying, there's an army camp next to that. So this sound kind of came into my mind. I couldn't work further, but I had a sketchbook all the time. So, and as we were walking, I found a tree bleeding with a gum. I took the bark and I started working with my small sketchbook, and which was exhibited from a previous completed house. And it was just a paper, a sketchbook with the 10 pages I exhibited. But before that, I used to wear clothes as a earring for a long time. Then I was in Sri Lanka, wherever we were traveling, I encountered this cloth, and because of the sound, I started seeing the cloth in the different formats. So this became a language to speak to me itself with the same bark. And there again, I was asked as an identity of my people, where are you from? Like each and everywhere we were stopped and we were asking for a identification. I have to say, no, I'm from India, I have to show my passport. This is the first time experiencing that. So this sort of thing made me to fix into my sketchbook, and I couldn't go further more. And they'll be talking together. I think it's us, come and follow me, can you help? The other one. Next. How will you leap? I have no feet. Next. How can you go forward? There's no place to go. And after coming from there, also there, I bought a lot of clothes, like loads of clothes, and I started tying like a garland, and I split it in the entire building. It was invisible, and you can only smell it. And again, I came back and I did the same work with a larger format of thing. And if you start, tying them, after a point, it's like performative. Like you puke and you smell of clove and you can't do anything. You have in one state of mode which you cannot express. And the space invites people. One can sit, one can stand, and you can at least accommodate another one, and not more than that. So this is the space I wanted to show for this conflict. Next. So this kind of, after coming from Sri Lanka, I started reading newspaper, and one day I saw this image, a boy washed away in a show. This image made me very disturbing, and I couldn't go further. So before I normally collect things, so I make them as a reference for the further work. And when I saw this image, and I kind of connected with the previous collected form and kind of made a conversation with the work itself. It says there is no forgetting the lips of people. Next, please. And when I started reading about the conflict, I came across the same image of the boy who was playing the same dress, coincidentally, and I used enamel transfer. And it says, why do you remember, why do you forget? Because for me, that's how I try to speak through the titles, because it keeps. Next, please. I've been collecting this old terracotta dolls, only the women and the mother and child. Only the mother and child. And I cast it in 3 resin. They are very brittle, you can't even keep them very harsh. Like, you have to be very gentle, otherwise they're brittle. So you'll never understand until it happens to you. Next, please. And where else they go? It's a restored piece of a wooden card, and it's been placed. Most of the time I take reference from the past image or the existing material from nature. For me, this is one of the oldest form of vessels, so which I sort of use these things in the reference in the part of the exhibition. I revive as fresh ever, and it's not been cut. It's there with me for more than 20 years. Next, please. I think 5 years back when I came to the India Fair, I went to the Jantar Mantar to see the protest of the farmers. Then I came back and I did this piece, and because otherwise my father used to say, you don't wash or just don't keep any grain in the paper. You have to pick them in your hands. Yes, we were trained like that. So, but when they were sitting there, and it gave me a different sense, and that's how you understand. So you need always somewhere you need image, or somewhere you need anything else you to think about what pinches you. So most of the time we are in this kind of state, we are designed like that. So I was also in that kind of a practice which made me go back. This I work myself also in that sense, but also I go on with that because I can't leave any trace or anything which disturbs me. I can't go and pass with that. With that I end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benitha. I have a question for Jayashree, and then I want to get really raw and medical for the last 5 minutes that we have together on the panel. And that concerns also something that Benitha is, what I said before, working with material that is actually decaying. You talk of caged nature, because where you live in Calcutta, that used to be a wetland and everything was green, and now it is basically a cemented neighborhood, as you said, and your work is basically kind of a resistance against that. You work with eggshells, you work with seeds, and everything else, a natural material, just like Benitha does in some of her work. Are you concerned about how your work will look in 5 years, or 10, or 50, in terms of it deteriorating?
To be very frank, I don't want to take this up because if I say that I won't use the anymore. So I'm working with the oil and acting with what kind of even I've been working with oil and activities long time. They are okay, but even then that feels off. So the material at the moment that I'm using, I'm trying my best that it stays for longer period. I mean, it should go within 5 years because the work I'm doing, I guess in the booth, I started that work in 2004 and it in 2022. And it's a kind
Good for you, and don't think about the question at all. Again, you're back in your studio. Now, according to a study from the Pew Research from 2022, 23% of people asked questions in India said like there's a lot of discrimination going on against women. 60% of them said that they have experienced discrimination in the past 12 months of this Pew Research survey following through. And 75% say that violence against women in India is a big problem. There's a great exhibition at the Koj Artists Association about 14 women artists addressing some of the violence. And I know we are a very heterogeneous group here, and I don't want this to turn into some homogeneous discussion, but I really wanted to hear your take on this, because it is something that is affecting each and every one in their practice, I would think, hope. Also, there's only, of the politicians in India, there's only 10% women. Those are the facts, and you are, navigating through the system from afar. I mean, you're in the United States, but can maybe also relate. I just really wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Like, what does that mean to you? If anybody wants to answer.
First, I think when we think about violence on women, we have to think that violence on marginalized subjects, violence on our emotions, and violence on everything, because sometimes we just don't understand what violence is. So we approve it and we pass it as a normal thing before it becomes before it becomes violence on us. So I rather critique the fundamental idea of violence, and I will try to subvert, and I will think that if I, in my skin and body and heart, feel that something is violating my space, I will not allow. I will also not let others to inhabit it. And I will not go and say this is fair or unfair, but something in your sense you understand what is right and what is wrong. So we all have to just be very conscious about thinking what violence is. So I always go back to that primordial state of anything, whether it's a language or violence or gender or any kind of marginalization in our life. So before we become completely cognitively ignorant about it, we rather would ask to ourselves, and then we'll, I'll not say fight back, but then we'll really think about it, contemplate, and to act as it requires.
Anyone over there?
I can't speak to India, but I can't even say it better than that. I think just to say that your answer was about action and how it feels to be in that body, and your question was more about how do we perceive the change in our world? Is it enough? and it's not enough. When is it ever going to be enough to even the score of the violence impacted on women and other marginalized communities? And so, I don't know, I think let's talk, about something about the work.
Well, considering the minute that we have left on the panel, and just going with the panels that we have here that address issues of disability, queerness, and so forth, I thought that us being on this panel, we should address the subject matter and give your thoughts on it. I think, going back into the arts then, and that was, I don't know if you got it, apparently you read WhatsApp, according to what you put on the screen here, is a question that I wanted to ask each and every one of you, basically as a final question. If you could change anything in the art world, if you had the power, that one wish, if you could change one thing. I sent the question prior, maybe you haven't received it, but if you could, that's why I'm repeating my question, so you get some time to think. But if you could change one thing in the art world, what would it be? Who wants to start? Benitha, start over there. Thank you.
I would say, people stop asking the question, how long is this lost? So, because it's very, I would say, unfair, because how can one address a thing? It has to speak by itself. So, I want to stick to that. So, I want to go on with that. So, I think, hopefully, in another sense, I'm sending you the answer.
I concur again. I think we're all on the same page. I think that's a really good point, that focusing so much on the end game and not the process and not the impulse or the temperament that the artist is experiencing, not kind of putting the emphasis on how is this going to, I don't know, what's it going to look like in 100 years? I don't know. The artist can't be accountable to every last. They have to kind of respond to materials that are within reach and that seem curious to them. And everything else I love. I think I totally agree with that. I think that's great.
What would you change?
That's what I would change that. I would change the focus back on the artists and less on, the commerce of art. Sorry to say it fair, but that's what I'm here for. I'm here to promote the art side. But we're all thinking the same thing. We're all here because we love art. So, that's why it's wonderful to have these conversations live.
Mithu Sen?
I will not change anything because I believe in art and art itself will change whatever is different. So it will happen and it is happening. That's the only hope. So art or singularly cannot change anything. It's not a singular act. It's a collective act. And it happens, it is happening from centuries. And that's the only ways that, all. So it's not the artist we are making now. Certainly, I will continue. So I will not take any responsibility to change anything. I will just continue living my life the way I am.
I want to change something, and that will be too much for me. I want to work. I just want to work. Time is very little for me left. So I want to work.
Everybody back to work. I have to thank each and every one on this panel for this hour that we shared together. Thank you so much. All your work is on display here at various booths at the fair. I wish you well with all your work, and I thank you, and I wish you a great day.